So, after breaking news this morning, should 16 and 17-year-olds be able to vote? I think so. The Labour government definitely thinks so. What do you think? Should 16 and 17-year-olds have the right to vote, or are they too young? Are they underdeveloped, even though they do have the rights to work and pay taxes? What do you think? But before we jump into today's video, it would be massively appreciated if you're new around there, subscribe to the channel, and also, if you want to enjoy the content, drop a like.
Labour are giving the right to vote to 16 and 17-year-olds. This is part of some might say shocking new electoral reforms.
Yeah, this is all in a bid to modernise democracy, apparently, and restore trust in politics among young people.
The government are going to look to extend voter ID to include bank cards and impose tougher rules to prevent foreign interference during elections. We're dropping the news. We want to discuss this, Carol.
Yep.
Labour obviously think this will be good for them. The 16 and 17-year-olds are going to be able to vote. Will it?
Do you know what? No, because a poll came out today and said that half of 16-year-olds don't want to vote. But anyway, that's by the by. And Labour are being really stupid here, because I think that a lot of young people now are onto reform. If you look at Farage, after he was in the jungle, he went on TikTok. He got millions of young followers. Anyway, that's by the by. But this is a desperate attempt by a government that knows it's stuffed, and to try and stay in power, it's going to give votes to immature, inexperienced kids who, frankly, when you're 16, and I'm not being insulting, you've got teenagers, I wouldn't necessarily trust them across the road, never mind put the next government in power. And I just think it's a really bad move. Kids aren't politically developed at 16. You might get the odd one who was very invested in politics at that age, but very few. And Labour are doing this because, historically, young people have always voted for the Labour Party.
Yeah, and those days are gone. I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head.
I mean, to be fair, though, right? To be fair, young people, when you say they're not developed, I think right now the voting ages are 18. There are a lot of 18-year-olds that are very much not developed either, okay? People that are 16 or 17, they're not really going to be into politics like that. They're not necessarily going to make decisions of their own. They probably will go off the general consensus from people that they're around, like the parents or their friends. The idea that 16-year-olds will just make the decision on their own, probably not. And then also, I don't even necessarily think this necessarily helps Labour, if you ask me. I do think it's probably a good thing that 16, 17-year-olds are able to vote. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with it. But it probably wouldn't help, because right now, right, the Labour Party is not doing well with a lot of people. Basically, every single demographic of people, they're not really doing well. And then also, when you consider the position on the Israel and Palestine conflict, a lot of young people are definitely supporting Palestine. But Israel's stance on that conflict doesn't do them any favor. So if they think this 16 or 17-year-olds necessarily would just boost whatever help they're going to get, probably not. And then also, people right now, 16, 17, they're not going to be the 16, 17 in 2028. Those are not going to be the same people. They're going to be 10, 11-year-old people. So the people that are seeing right now what Labour are doing, they're not going to be the one that are 16, 17. They probably will have a different perspective, possibly, by the time they're 16 and 17. And whatever Labour is doing right now, they probably wouldn't be able to actually feel it for them to actually make the judgment. So they could actually vote for them. But it could obviously go the other way, considering the stance on major issues like the Israel-Palestine conflict, which I don't think young people are necessarily supporting the position that Labour holds.
In this fact that actually the younger people that I talk to, and I've got 2 teenagers in my life, they are all much more inclined to lean to the right.
Which I think is even more important, that Labour is doing this and doing it in the name of democracy, frankly. You think back to being 16, not everybody goes to university. They join the jobs market, they go out there, they earn, they pay taxes. Why shouldn't you be able to vote as well and have a say in your future? So it's about forward-looking decisions, things we vote on today.
Fire on Labour at the next election?
Well, that's up to Labour
so many young people love reform.
Well, maybe they do, but and that's an electoral problem that Labour has. But this is a democratic decision we're seeing being made, and it's incredibly important that people can have a say in their future. Dare I bring it up? But look at Brexit. A lot of the people who voted for Brexit have died. They will never see what the impact of that is. A lot of the young people who may not have voted for it are suffering the consequences. They can't go and live and work elsewhere, but they never had that say.
Why not? Why can't they go and live and work elsewhere?
Well, for example...
I know plenty of people have gone to Spain or wherever, Europe, across the world.
And get a visa.
Well, yeah, you can get a visa, but it's a tricky process. You can't just turn up
not
and
a
live and
tricky
work
process.
as you could
It's like
when
it
we were
was
part of the
before.
EU.
The idea that it's not a tricky process for a young person to move overseas, to go study or to get a job, like it was before, is absolutely criminal. That's a criminal statement. Back when the UK was still part of the EU, it was literally the easiest thing you can literally do. No visas, no restrictions. You could just move there. But now, literally, you need to get visas. There are so many barriers when you compare now to before. So the idea that it's, oh, well, it was just like it was before, it literally wasn't. It literally isn't. It makes no sense. We're not part of the EU anymore. So how could you possibly say it's the same thing?
Apply for a visa and invariably you get one. This idea that kids are now
Invariably.
prisoners in the UK because of Brexit is a joke. But you're saying this is about democracy. This is not. This is gerrymandering. This is actually barefaced ballot box stuffing. That's what they're doing. They know that the people that voted them in are never going to vote for them again. So they're trying to find a whole new tranche of people who will.
You know, one of my issues with this is we are at dangerous risk of losing childhood in this country and all across the world, actually. Viewing 16-year-olds as adults. And I liked that line in the sand because I think voting is an important part. Obviously, it's fundamental democracy. And therefore, I worry that if we start to view 16 and 17-year-olds as adults, what else will we therefore move towards permitting?
But we
them
already
to
do. They can work, they can marry, they can do grown-up things already. Why not give them a vote as well? Carol, I'll come back to you on that.
Well,
You
actually,
both said...
let me just take you.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
You can ask me in a second.
Go on.
But you said they can do everything. I'm afraid 16-year-olds are given special treatment in terms of if they commit a crime, they don't go to jail at 16. They don't go to jail until they're 18. So if that's the case, maybe if they get the vote, maybe the other things should be moved for them too.
Well, you're right. Yeah, there are some...
I mean, you can say that, but you say you're not treating 16-year-olds like adults anymore. Number one, voting is not mandatory, okay? Making voting mandatory and then making sure 16 and 17-year-olds have to absolutely vote, that's a different proposition. This is not mandatory. Most 16, 17-year-olds will not vote. Young people don't generally vote. It's older people that vote. The older a group of people get, the generation of people get, the more likely they are to vote. 16 and 17, you're probably going to find 10% of these people voting. So this idea that we're treating them like adults, it's like, no, not necessarily. Number one, you can choose not to participate. That's number one. And that's number two, most of these people wouldn't end up voting anyway. When I was 16, I had nothing with politics. Like, I had no relations with the idea of voting. Absolutely not.
Some things you can't do until 18, like drinking and smoking and all the rest of it. You have both said in this discussion that young people are going to vote for reform and that this is gerrymandering on the part of the Labour Party.
so.
Which one is it? It can't be both.
So it's trying to set up the election in favour of themselves.
Well, if you think everyone's going to vote reform who's 16,
Well, I
then
think
surely that's
what
Labour
Carol's saying is I think
shooting
Labour are
themselves in the foot.
misguided. Labour probably think that youths will vote
Well,
for
Labour
them,
see the same polls that we do. Why are they misguided?
They don't quite get the pulse of the nation. I think there's an air of arrogance with Keir Starmer on many fronts, but I think they just by default reckon that 16-year-olds will vote for Labour because that's how it's always been. I don't think they quite... You can see it with the social media followings of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. He completely dwarfs all the parties combined, and I don't think Labour and the Tories quite understand this new social media generation.
And just a scientific fact, science tells us that the frontal cortex of the brain, which is about making decisions and assessing things, is not fully developed till you're 25. So we're asking kids, basically kids, to decide, and you're saying all of these kids are going to be working. Most 16-year-olds aren't. They're in education or they're at university. And so they're not paying taxes, but they're getting a say in who runs the country.
In their own future, in the decisions that are going to come to
and you
pass
think
in
at
10,
16,
20 years' time.
When you were 16, Seb, did you understand politics? Were you thinking seriously
Tell you when I
about the
understood
future?
politics, when I was 18. Do you know why? Because I got
Well,
the
there you
vote.
go.
And then I took an interest,
vote.
and that's how I'm here today. It's that catalyst. It was getting the vote that got me interested in politics.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get people to vote at 16, we can get a much more politically engaged country, making much more sense.
I would say that
That's a very good point. When you give people an incentive to vote, when you give them the right to do something, they are obviously more inclined to want to find out what is it that you're actually making me do here. At 18, more people are actively trying to vote. because they're given the rights to vote. They're more politically aware because they're given the rights to be politically aware. So maybe 16, 17-year-olds that we're talking about right now not being able to vote or not being politically aware, maybe it's just because the fact that they're restricted in making that decision. Maybe when you hand them the decision making to actually vote, maybe we will see like a surge in amount of 16, 17-year-olds that can actually be able to talk about politics, be aware about politics, to read more about politics. Maybe that's what's going to happen. Because not allowing people to do something, you can't obviously then say, oh, they're not really interested. They don't really care about it. Yeah, of course they don't. Because they're not even allowed to participate in the first place.
That what happened to you was unusual. I would think the majority of 16-year-olds. Well, there's a poll out today. Half of them don't want to vote. They say they just
Half of them do. Should we deny them that right?
Yes, because they're not ready for it. It's not a right.
That's extremely
it's not a
patronising
right.
to young
It's
people.
not at all.
Young
It's
people
a
have had this
huge
for years and
responsibility.
years.
It's a huge responsibility.
Okay.
And it's one that I trust them to
All
hold.
right.
Right, Carmelo,
Thanks, mate.
Sebastian Selleck, thank you so much.
I mean, at the end of the day, right, I don't think this necessarily gives any form of insurance or any form of backing that it will be guaranteed that these people will vote for Labour, even though the Labour government are the one proposing this kind of law. This most likely would not guarantee any victory in general election, but it is a discussion to actually open. Do you support it or do you not support it? I support it, but I'm definitely willing to shift the other side. If obviously it seems like they're not interested, they don't really care. Like at the end of the day, the 16, 17, we're talking about, well, they're not developed yet. Well, guess what? They just most likely would listen to what's going on around them. And then from that, they're going to make the decision, which is generally how you learn about things. But that's just my thoughts on the video. What do you think? You can put it down in the comments below. And also, if you're new to the channel, subscribe and also drop a like on the video.